Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Tuesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for hanging out today. As always, presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. We got some great Calgary merch. We got the swag here with the hat. We got the sweater there. It is absolutely sweater weather in Calgary right now, so get on that right now. seaofdead403.ca. As always, we are fueled by Swift Energy. Check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off. Busy one here today for those watching the stream. You're getting the Tuesday and the Wednesday show for podcast listeners. For those of you watching on YouTube later, you can get these early if you head over to twitch.tv/primetimepk. So for the Tuesday show, it is Super Bowl X Factors. We're going to be looking at who should be selling at this NBA trade deadline. The fighters to watch for UFC 312. Spoiler alert. Had to stretch a little bit on that, but we're going to give them to you anyway, and a recap of what we saw on Monday Night Raw. On the Wednesday show, we're going to recap the Philadelphia Eagles season. How did they get to Super Bowl 59? We will break that down for you. Plus, who will be buying at the NBA trade deadline, boxing pound for pound, and a preview of AEW Dynamite. So that is what's coming up on the stream or the next couple of days in podcast world. So let's dive right into it and get ready for Super Bowl 59. Who will be the players that will decide this upcoming NFL championship? Super Bowl 59 is here as the Philadelphia Eagles look to dethrone the two-time defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. We know who the stars are. Mahomes, Barkley, Jones, not, Daniel Jones, Chandler Jones. We know who the superstars are going to be. But who will be the X Factors who will decide Super Bowl 59? Let's break it down, shall we? We will take a look first on the Kansas City sideline. And obviously, Patrick Mahomes is going to have his day with all of this, right? But some of the other guys who could step up, Kareem Hunt, I think is going to be really important for the Kansas City Chiefs. Pacheco just hasn't really been it in the postseason so far as he works his way back from injury. For Hunt, not a big fan of some of the off-field transgressions, obviously. But from an on-the-field standpoint, they need to get the run game going even just a little bit to take some of the pressure off of Patrick Mahomes. And they don't really run Mahomes down at the goal line. He'll scramble and make a play, but I do think that he is a quarterback that isn't going to be doing a tush-push or anything like that. So they're going to need Kareem Hunt to, I think, step up in a big way once you get down inside the 5-yard line and be able to put some of those drives away. Now, the main red zone offense is probably going to be Mahomes to Kelsey, but just to at least put the threat of the run in there against the Philadelphia Eagles in this fantastic defense of theirs, I think Kareem Hunt is going to be very important to see if they can turn a couple threes into sevens down at the goal line. Also, you need to very much focus, I think, on the offensive line. And the offensive line are the X factors really in every football game. But in this one, for this team, I think it is specifically important. The only time Kansas City has lost the Super Bowl, the offensive line was really banged up going into that game. Facing this Philadelphia defensive front is not an easy thing to do. And this offensive line has had a few struggles. They did play pretty well against the Buffalo Bills, but overall, it hasn't been perfect for them. And so I think that this is going to be a very important game. If Philadelphia has to bring extra rushers to get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, they're going to have a bad time. Mahomes is so good on the blitz, or against the blitz, at finding where that blitz is coming from, basically throwing right at it because there's an opening there and taking advantage of that opportunity. If Philadelphia is just able to get there with 4, or Jalen Carter, basically. If they are just able to get there with 4, then this is going to be a really, really difficult night for the Kansas City Chiefs to win this football game. One on the defensive side of the football, Drew Tranquill, the the outside linebacker for Kansas City. He is tied for the team lead in tackles in the postseason. He is going to be huge in defending the run and trying to keep Philadelphia one-dimensional. We said it the other day, the big story of this game for Kansas City is, can they make Jalen Hurts beat them? Can they make this team a passing offense and try to limit Saquon Barkley? Tranquil is going to be monstrous when it comes to that sort of a setup. So we will see what he can do and if he is able to limit anything on the Philadelphia Eagles side at all. For the Philadelphia Eagles, they have a couple of guys that I think can really step up in this game. The one that I think is the key on this team is Devonta Smith. The Chiefs have been fantastic against number one options so far this year and in the receiving game. And so it is going to be, I think, imperative for Devonta Smith to have a big game. A.J. Brown, I would imagine, gets kind of the Reed McDuffie stack thing there. And now Devonta Smith, the pressure is going to be on him to go out, make a few of those plays in the passing game, and keep things moving a little bit. So I think there is going to be a lot of pressure on him. And if he can turn out and have a really big game, which we've seen him do in big spots before, then all of a sudden, this offense looks really scary for the Philadelphia Eagles. On the defensive side of things, Nolan Smith is going to be really, I think, important. He has the potential to be a game breaker on the defensive side. We know what Carter and Bond and Blankenship and those guys can do, but Nolan Smith, he has the potential, I think, to be one of those guys as well. The speed that he can bring when he is rushing the quarterback is really quite impressive. So if he can bring that speed, put that pressure on, and again, create some of those opportunities on the defensive side to force the Chiefs back further and further and further and just put that pressure on them, then this is going to be a really good day for this defense. And I think the last one here is Vic Fangio. He is a fantastic defensive coordinator. He now has the challenge of going up against Mahomes and going up against Andy Reid, who are constantly magicians in getting guys open and forcing defenses to try to make some big open field tackles and stuff like that. Their play design and their execution is second to none. So it is going to be up to Vic Fangio to out-chess the chess masters in this game and try to limit them the best way he can. Really, when you go through this game, the punch counter punch all the way through is just fantastic. I am so looking forward to what we get on Sunday night out in New Orleans. So a lot more NFL coverage still to come here on Couch Potato Diary, twitch.tv/primetimepk. There we go. We're going to have, like I said, we're going to run through the Eagles season coming up on the Wednesday pod portion, which is going to be streaming later here on Twitch. We are also going to be running through Kansas City season. How did they do? And how did they get to this point? Going to do a draft of the two teams and going to have the full breakdown. Plus, we'll have the fun props. We call it the Booper Soul around here. My wife comes on to help out with some of the more oddball props that the NFL has to offer. So that is all the coverage that is coming up here over the next little bit. But let's transition into the world of basketball as the NBA trade deadline is rapidly approaching. Some monster moves have already been made, but who are going to be some of the other teams that can help impact this deadline? Today, in this one, we're going to be looking at the sellers at the NBA trade deadline. So let's dive in with a little bit more basketball talk. The NBA trade deadline is just a couple of days away. Who are going to be the teams that can help decide how this trade deadline goes? Let's look at some of the sellers. We'll look at the buyers later, but the sellers, these are the ones who I think can really affect how the next couple of days go in the NBA. And I'll start with the Miami Heat. I think it is time to refocus. They never rebuild out there. And it's not like you're starting from nothing. You have Bam, you have Hero, you have a couple of other younger pieces that I think kind of fit the Heat culture and all of those sorts of things. But it's time to get away from Jimmy Butler, and it is time to look to the future. And I'm not saying anything that they don't know. I think they want to trade Jimmy Butler at this deadline, and they want to be able to get out from that, get a couple more assets in there, and really reload going into next season. But I just think it's, I don't want to say imperative, but they are getting into this little middle ground where they're not getting the draft picks they need to get any difference makers, but they're also not threatening anyone to even advance to the second round. And with an aging superstar, that's not an awesome place to be. So I think Miami is one that I think really does need to refocus. The Washington Wizards are up next. This one isn't a hot take by any stretch of the imagination. This one's very obvious, but I do think they can shape the rest of the year. With Jonas Valanciunas, there are a lot of teams that are looking for a really solid big right now, and he is very affordable. And if they want to do full teardown thing, like Kuzma, Brogdon, even Poole, I think can help impact and help out the depth of some teams where maybe a little bit more scoring is needed and a little bit more help on the wing is necessary. So I think that those are guys. Poole, obviously, if he's in the right mindset and all of that, I mean, all of them really. But if you can get those guys and you're a contending team, that can maybe help shift the balance in your favor. So I think it is. I think they have actually an interesting hand to play in how noteworthy the next couple of days are. The Toronto Raptors. I had to put my guys on there. They actually do, I think, have some interesting pieces. Bruce Brown, they have been trying to trade him away basically the second they got him. And now you're coming up on the time where you kind of got to do it. Seeing a couple posts on X about how Chris Boucher is getting some interest as well. So those are a couple of guys who could help. And again, the focus on the bigs. I think Pirtle, the contract's big, but Pirtle and Olynyk are a couple of big men who I think can help out some contenders as well. And the last one, the focus of the football world is on New Orleans, but we're going to focus on the basketball team. This year's been a disaster with injuries and with everything like that. This is, I mean, Brandon Ingram is probably the best player available now. And it is a rental, and there's a lot of questions about how impactful this guy can be, and this, that, and the other thing. But I think that this is a team that needs a bit of a different direction. And it's wild that the Zion thing hasn't worked in the way that it has, and now just everyone on this team is getting hurt. So it's kind of, if you can get any assets for anything that's not bolted down and just kind of reset, I think that's probably the way to go out in New Orleans. So again, for podcast listeners and YouTube watchers, this the trade deadline talk is going to continue tomorrow, looking at the NBA buyers. For Twitch watchers, we're going to continue that a little bit later on here in the stream today. But our focus now shifts to the world of combat sports as the Ultimate Fighting Championship gets ready for UFC 312 this weekend out in Australia. 2 title fights at the very top of the card. But what about the rest of it? Admittedly, it's not great, but we still have a couple of fighters that you should watch coming up this weekend. UFC 312 is in Australia this weekend. The main event, really interesting bout between Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland, with Tatiana Suarez getting her championship opportunity in the co-main event. After that, it dries up pretty quick, I'll be honest with you, but there are still a couple of fighters to watch on UFC 312. We will start with Jimmy Crute. He is facing Rodolfo Bellato. At one time, Crute was actually a really interesting light heavyweight prospect, and he's moving up, and he's moving up, and he's moving up, and then he has a fight with Anthony Smith. He loses that. Then he loses to Jamal Hill, and now all of a sudden, Jimmy Crute hasn't won since 2020. He will have a distinct home field advantage going into this bout, and I think at this point, a run to a title, like he's a couple years away from being a couple years away, if he wants to get back on that train. But just to get back in the win column, just to get moving, this is a very important fight, I think, for him. Going up against Bellato, who is not a big name or anything like that. This is the type of fight that if this one doesn't happen, then I would imagine that the UFC probably looks elsewhere for their Aussie content, and Jimmy Crute is looking for a PFL or a GFL contract if the second one there ever actually happens. Moving on, in the welterweight division, we also have a fighter kind of similar to Crute in Jake Matthews. He'll be facing Francisco Prado, and it's kind of the same story as Crute, only at welterweight. He hasn't just... This one, it's different because there was a lot of potential, strong wrestler, and he hasn't had that big loss. It hasn't it's not like there's been a big step up for him and then he's lost. It's just been kind of, okay, he's won two and he's lost one, and he's won two and then he's lost one. And now we're alternating and doing all these things. And he just hasn't really seemed to be able to find that stride in the UFC. And now he's 30. And again, I'm not saying, I don't think this is one where he needs a win to keep his job or anything like that. But we're also at a point where I don't see a title run in his future. And when I just think of going back to when he was starting out as a prospect in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, that seems insane to me that he's not even going to get like a title eliminator thing or anything like that. So it's a bit of a surprise the way that career has kind of turned out for one Jake Matthews. And the last one, it's Wang Kong, who will be facing Bruna Brazil. I'm interested to see how Kong responds. She's coming off of her first loss of her career at 6-1. She's won a couple of big fights. She's been a champion in other promotions and things of that nature. She's going to need a response here, and I'll be interested to see how she handles that coming off of the first defeat in her career. So those are a few of the fighters to watch outside of the main event at UFC 312. More fight coverage coming up here this weekend this week leading up to the weekend. We'll look at some of the fights that have been announced recently in the UFC, and then coming up on the weekend, coming up on the weekend preview, it'll be the UFC 312 breakdown as we look at the main fights there. But the WWE has hit their stride as they are on the road to WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble is in the books. How do they follow it up? Let's take a look at Monday Night Raw. The Royal Rumble is officially in the rearview mirror on the road to WrestleMania, and the WWE's next stop was in Cleveland for Monday Night Raw. We said coming out that they needed to hit a home run with Jey Uso. I think they got pretty close to that. I think this was a double into the gap that maybe we could have stretched into a triple, but, batting, forcing a baseball metaphor is a little tough now, but you know what I'm saying. It was a good one. You see the real emotion when he cuts the promo to kick off the show, and there's tears, and he was, I think, very obviously choked up at everything that has transpired in his life in the last 48, 72 hours. And so, again, the crowd chanting one more time with him, it's perfect. And I understand, it's a fun entrance. And so people will latch on to, he's not over, the entrance is over. Well, I'll be honest, Seth Rollins is a better wrestler than him. I think Seth Rollins' entrance is more over than Seth Rollins is, too. There are guys who are going to be like that. So the thing with Jey, though, is that once the entrance is done and the promo is starting, the crowd is into him. And the crowd is following along with his journey and invested in it. And so again, I think they made the right move with this. It's not a move I was anticipating, but I think they made the right move with Jey Uso getting the win at the Royal Rumble. And then it's the perfect dynamic with Gunther coming out, cutting the promo that's perfect for him. He made us all believe that he was down and out, but he is the only true holder of that title, and he doesn't even want Jey Uso to belittle him by challenging for a championship. It was just so smug and so smarmy and so perfect, and I loved it. Just fantastic work from Gunther in this one. Couldn't have loved it more. I thought he was great. And look, it's probably going to be the match for Mania. And there's a chance that it kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, but I think that these two are going to really mesh very well together going towards that WrestleMania. The first match of the night was Penta taking on Ludwig Kaiser, and it looks like this is going to be the first feud. It's another really strong match for Penta. The crowd's behind him. After the match, Kaiser and Butch combine for an attack. Butch comes out as a distraction. Kaiser attacks, and they didn't walk away together or anything like that, but I think it's an interesting tandem when you look Butch or Pete Dunne or whoever, Pete Dunne, he needs something to get him rolling, right? He just needs anything right now. And Kaiser, I don't mind him kind of branching out and being a leader of something right now. So I think this works. I think there's a little bit more for Kaiser, and I think there's a lot more for Pete Dunne that can be done. Charlotte Flair comes out and cut a promo. And I was saying before, the crowd was into Charlotte when she came back in Indy. They were into it when she won. This was kind of coming back down to earth. This crowd was not ready for Charlotte Flair's babyface return to the WWE. Beautiful day this was not. They were not having this one. I have never been super down on Charlotte Flair before. There have been times where I've rolled my eyes like everyone else has. But the crowd is not buying this from her. So the quicker we flip into heel mode, the better. I think with her, this one, it kind of felt like they were kind of walking the line a little bit. Yeah, let's see. How do they respond? It wasn't a full babyface. It wasn't a full heel. Rhea comes out and challenges her. I think they probably have, it's the easiest story that you can tell with those two going to WrestleMania. And kind of this trilogy bout between the new and old generation. And so that's, if I had a guess, I would say that's the way they can go. But I think Charlotte, it's an interesting dynamic with her going over to SmackDown and taking on Tiffany Stratton as well. She's teasing the NXT thing. I think a lot of people would be really excited with a Charlotte Flair-Julia match, but that would be the second time that Charlotte has done the challenging the NXT champion with the Royal Rumble win. I can't imagine that's actually going to be something seriously considered, but it's a big name for NXT coming up tonight. Then we get the tag team bout. It is the New Day taking on Dragon Lee and Rey Mysterio Jr. The New Day, we finally get some new music, and didn't suck. We talked about how bad the music was the other day. Music in this one, real good. Really enjoyed it. Thought it was a really strong entrance. And overall, this was a fun match. My one critique is that it was a touch too long. It just felt like it was like, okay, we're ready for a different match now. Can we get this thing moving? And obviously there's a lot of story that goes along with this one. Logan Paul comes out and does a bit of a distraction. He and Ray are facing each other on Monday next week in a Elimination Chamber qualifying match, which means Ray is definitely losing to Logan Paul in that particular bout. Dragon Lee hits a wicked Hurricane Rana over the top rope on Woods, so Lee getting to take advantage of a bit of a spotlight. Crowd really not into him all that much, and eventually it is the New Day getting the dub and kind of getting their thing on track. Liv Morgan against Io Sky Elimination Chamber match. This one was another really fun match. Liv gets the win because of a disqualification with Rhea's involvement. They had attacked Rhea and Io backstage before the match started, they being Liv and Raquel, and that leads to Rhea coming out because some interference from Raquel, and it ends up costing. And so I didn't like how little sistery Io felt in this whole thing, and you guys know I'm very protective of my Genius of the Sky. I really wanted there to be a little bit more for her here. The match was great. I thought, again, it was another very good match between these two. I just thought, like, the way it all played out is that Io is fading into a secondary role, and I don't want that to be the case for her. I think that she is genuinely a main event level performer in the WWE. Then we get a Seth Rollins promo, and I've said it before. Rollins' style is just not mine. I am not a big Seth Rollins fan. I think his in-ring work is amazing. I think he is genuinely one of the best in-ring performers that we have in the world of wrestling right now, and has been for a very long time. I'm a visionary. I'm Seth. I just, none of it, the way he talks, the way he does anything, none of it feels like it is an actual way a person would talk. And it's just not, he's not for me. The promo style and all of that. He calls out Punk, he calls out Reigns, he asks Sammy to take CM Punk out, blah blah. Like he said a lot of words, but I don't think he actually said anything. So yeah, he's not my cup of tea when it comes to promo stuff. In ring, he's phenomenal, and there is absolutely no questioning that. It's still just a little cartoony for me from Seth Rollins. Then we get to the main event. It is Sami Zayn against CM Punk with a spot in the Elimination Chamber on the line. And this is one of the things we kind of touched on, but they built up the Rumble so well and so effectively. And just this is that there are all these big stars going into this match, and this is where it's all going to culminate, and it's so important. And now, okay, most of you didn't win, but now you got one more chance. And so now that WrestleMania thing gets pivoted over to Elimination Chamber, and now the Chamber feels so huge. Like, this felt like a very, very important match that we were getting on Monday Night Raw. So bravo to them for building up the stakes for Elimination Chamber. Sammy getting a near fall after Punk was talking some trash. I thought that was great. Punk catches him charging in and hits the GTS for the win. Again, I think it really got over the importance of a title opportunity. We don't even know what title they're going for yet, but just getting to WrestleMania and getting an opportunity at a championship means that much to these guys. And so the Chamber, fantastic stuff in getting that over. After the match, we get a Kevin Owens attack on Sami Zayn to send the show off of the air. Looks like that'll be probably our thing for Mania again. Would be my guess anyway. I would have no problem with that. And I think it would probably have to be like they've had a couple of interactions again at WrestleMania. This one would have to be like deathmatch sort of a thing, like just a wild brawl would have to be the thing that is taking place. So I think you can do it. I think it'd be a really, really fun. I am a little surprised that might be the direction they go, but I think that it's setting up to be something pretty good. Overall, I thought it was a good episode of Monday Night Raw. Not a blowaway show, but we start to get a few things set up here for WrestleMania and things of that nature. My one frustration is a lack of women on this show. Again, the Women's Royal Rumble proved that there is a lot of depth on the women's side, and I think that needs to be showcased a little bit more. But what we did get was really good. I think this was a very good show. It, again, legitimizes Jey Uso a little bit more. We get Penta on, telling that story a little bit, and now, again, it's the CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, who, by the way, they mentioned on the show, is hurt after getting his face stomped into a steel step, and he's going to be out for some time. And so you're getting that whole little thing wrapping around, and also there's a little bit of a Sami Zayn, and where does he fit in all of this sort of a thing. So I think, again, it's a good show, not a great show. It's not where I'm like, oh man, March cannot come soon enough. Elimination Chamber, let's go. Nothing like that. But a fine show from the WWE. That is going to do it for the Tuesday podcast. So for those watching on YouTube or listening in podcast form, that's going to do it for everything today. We are, of course, presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for that awesome Calgary swag. And always, we are fueled by Swift Energy. Check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off some of their focus drinks. Helps with the energy as well. So, Tuesday's podcast is now in the book for podcast listeners. I'll talk to all of you tomorrow.